So hello everyone. My name is Taylor Cello and I am the president of the Graduate Student Educational Research Association, or GSERA as we fondly know it as. And tonight's event is going to be all about unmasking imposter syndrome, thriving in academic spaces. And the great thing about this topic is that, and this goes just back to all the conversations I've had with classmates of mine in our programs, is that this is experienced at all stages of the academic experience, especially for anyone who might not have been in grad school for a little bit or are fresh to this program, or even if you're about to defend, we all feel it in some degree. And so we have a fantastic panel that is going to be talking about this. They've done research on this, some of them. So we're going to get some really great strategies tonight of how to embrace it, how to mitigate it, and some strategies to take away to share with your networks as well. So without further ado, before we dive into, our panelists and moderator introductions, I also want to take a moment to introduce some of our executive board that is here tonight. So as I mentioned, my name is Taylor Cello. I'm a third year in our EDD program, and I'm the president of GSERA. And I'll pass it on over to Alyssa to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa. I am the GSERA secretary this year. I'm a second year student in the program, and I'm excited to be with you all tonight.
Awesome. Chung, want to take it away for introductions?
Yes, thanks, Jade. So, hi everyone, I'm Chung, and you see they pronouns. I am the GSERA Communications Director. So, all those flyers that you see on Instagram, I'm the one that pushes those out. So excited to see all you here tonight. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And Randell, we'd love to introduce you.
Hey, good afternoon or evening or whatever time of day it is for you, everyone. My name is Randall Irving Jr. I serve as the GSERA treasurer for this year. I'm on my second year at Northeastern, and I'm glad to be with you all.
Excellent. And we do have two other executive board members that will be joining us shortly. Their names are Jennifer Miller, she's our vice president, as well as Chris Vo, who is our program director. And then Sherry, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. I am the past president of GSERA, and so I serve in a kind of emeritus role. I sit in on board meetings just to provide some of that history and context when the current Rockstar board are making their decisions. So it's wonderful to be here and to see this new group of leaders already off to such a great start.
Thanks so much, Sherry. And without further ado, for those of you joining, thank you for joining us here for our GSERA General Membership event about unmasking imposter syndrome. And I'm going to pass the baton to our fearless faculty advisor for GSERA and our moderator tonight, host with the most, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for the introduction. It's a high bar that you set for me right there. Hi everyone. My name is Andrew Anderson. I've been with Northeastern since 2018. I've been the faculty advisor for GSERA for the last 2.5 years or so. I'm really excited for this evening, this opportunity to build on these events that we started last year and continuation this year. So part of in addition to being the faculty advisor and a professor in the program, I'm also a principal of a middle school in Barrington, Rhode Island. It's a 6th, 7th, 8th middle school, and this topic is something that is lived not only for being a student, being a professor, also being a principal as well. So I'm really excited to be here this evening with you and moderate this event. So, Dr. Ali, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Dr. Noor Ali, looking through the participant list here and recognizing a whole bunch of names and faces. You have likely taken F2 with me, maybe. That is EDU 7218, Introduction to Social Justice, or another social justice course, which is Designing Educational Systems for Justice and Equity. I'm full-time faculty here at the Graduate School of Education, and I lead the Transformative School Leadership concentration in the EDD program. Also done a ton of work around the MED, MET spaces. Fun fact, also Husky did my EDD at Northeastern several years ago. Author, and most importantly, a theorist. I came up with a micro-theoretical framework under critical race theory, which I call Muskrit. So that's kind of my area of expertise, all things social justice, experiential learning, STEM education, change leadership. I served as a principal at a non-public school for many years. Veteran K-12 teacher, many, many years, 23 years to be exact. Yes, I'm that old. And just now started a high school for the school where I served as a principal. So I'm the strategic lead for the high school that just started this fall, which was my gift of retirement to me, which was not really retirement then, I guess. So excited to be here.
That's awesome. Is Dr. Kilfor, I'm not sure if I see you on screen.
I don't believe I see him just yet, so we can move on to the next introduction in case he's not here.
All right. And Tracy, do I see you on screen as well?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Great.
Yeah. Hi. Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tracy Pasquadi, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a part-time faculty and dissertation chair at Northeastern. And my day, I guess I don't know what's day or night. My full-time role, I work at UC Berkeley. I help departments with their climate, their diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And that's kind of the thread in my background. I actually have a long history with Northeastern. I did my master's in counseling practicum back in the day at Northeastern's Counseling Center. And I used to work in Boston in student success or in advising. Also, several years before I came out here to California and helped also with some starting up the local campuses here in the Bay Area. So I have kind of even though I live in California, I have strong connections to Northeastern and Boston in general. Yeah, and I think much of my career has been dedicated to first generation and historically marginalized population. I myself identify as first generation, so it's been kind of my why and why I went into the field and why I keep doing what I'm doing. So that's just a little bit of background about me.
Awesome. That is awesome. Again, thank you, Dr. Ellie. Thank you, Dr. Pasquidi, for your time this evening and for having this conversation. And for the participants that are present, we have prepared a few questions as really as starters to get the dialogue flowing, going. And as Tay mentioned earlier, I will definitely have opportunities for some question and answering a little bit later on, and we'll talk about that format when we get to that point. So for my panelists and whoever would like to start, we can dive in with this first question is how would you define starting, right? To operationalize, how would you define imposter syndrome? Either Dr. Ali or Dr. Pasquadia, if you want to join in there.
I'm trying to see who wants to go first. Do you want me to share anything, or I guess I'll just kick off really.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, when I think about what imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon means to me, I think it's really about self-doubt, and doubt of, I'll just speak for myself, from of accomplishments. Even though I have this long, I have a PhD, I have a master's in counseling, I have all this experience, that feeling like you're not either good enough or that just the self-doubt is there. I think the other piece of it for me is about kind of competition, about often comparing myself to others, which we'll probably go into it in kind of the other questions, but I feel like it's also it's partially kind of what I feel myself, but I also now, after several years, many years about thinking about this, I think it's also about kind of the external factors, what's going on in the environment. We're in dominant cultures that is very individualistic. So in that sense, it kind of causes you to be kind of competitive. So it's kind of an intersection of both, kind of your individual experience and what's going on in whatever environment you happen to be in. So that's a little bit about how I define imposter syndrome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. A couple of things that come to my mind when I think about imposter syndrome is I don't see it as something static. I don't see it as something that is always there, but rather a feeling, a thought, or a belief that comes and goes depending on the environment or the situation that you may be in. It is definitely something um, overarchingly this belief that you are undeserving of the space that you occupy. You are undeserving of an achievement that you have gained, that you are undeserving or really not smart enough or capable enough for the position that you are in. Um, and um, so yes, like Tracy said, of a feeling of self-doubt, most certainly. But it's also something that can really corrode one's confidence, and your sense of ownership of the positions and the spaces that you occupy.
Great. Thank you to both. Before we move on, are these pressures of feeling that you don't fit in? I know you both alluded to it, but are they internal, external? Are they both? What if you could elaborate on that?
I think there's many different factors that play into it. Um, um, and obviously I think positionality has a lot to do with it as well. As a woman of color who's very identifiable as being Muslim and brown, and operating in a world that is white dominant, there are all of those external factors that are at play. Um, White male confidence, we know, is much easier to come by, and may not have a direct correlation to competency. And the opposite is true, um, for folks with my positionality. So I think there's definitely a lot of the external assumptions that exist around us. And then also there may be internal factors at play, such as the cultures that we belong to, whether they are cultures of humility, or how we grew up or the values that we grew up with. I think all of those come into play. There's something that I strongly believe in, which is self-talk, and a lot of times, um, when you're a child, the adult's voice will become your own voice as you grow older, right? The voice of the adult in and around you will become your own voice as you grow older. So I think there's a lot of that that's also important, right? What are the sort of generational traumas that we're bringing to ourselves, and that kind of self-talk. So I don't know if we want to categorize that as external, as internal. It's hard for me to parse them apart because there's your internal voice is so heavily situated within the external parameters that exist around us. So I think it's really a mix of both.
Yeah. Thank you for that response. Dr. Pasquadia, before we move on to the next question, do you have anything to add to that?
I 100% agree with what you're saying, Noor. I mean, you said it so well. I think I don't even know if I have anything to add to that except for just kind of, for myself, I'm very externally driven by affirmations or lack of affirmations from folks. And so, uh, sometimes when we think about kind of that internal voice, and if I'm doubting myself or thinking that I don't either belong or I'm not good enough, if I don't get the affirmation opposite of that, and instead get the affirmation that, oh yeah, right, you don't actually are not good enough, or don't, not that people are actually saying that, but the environment and the culture that Dr. Ali was speaking about, kind of promotes that, then that's kind of, then I start to believe in that, kind of what is being said externally,
Yeah.
whether it's hidden or whether it's evident or not.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for both really kicking off this discussion on operationalizing imposter syndrome and sharing that invaluable response, which is great. Thank you. Tay, do you want to go to the next question? Or I'm not sure who's driving. Tay, are you driving? All right, cool. Awesome. All right. So this when we're forming these questions, this question came up, which I think is really, really interesting. I'll give you a second to everyone to read it, but what's the difference between healthy self-doubt that drives growth and imposter syndrome that becomes paralyzing? So we're looking at this idea of healthy self-doubt with this intersection of imposter syndrome that can become paralyzing. So either
Tracy, you want to go first?
I'm actually thinking, I'm still thinking about it, even though seen the question ahead of time. It's like percolating in my brain still. I don't know if you have anything to go first, but
I think they're two different things. And I don't think that there is a thin line between them which separates self-doubt that drives growth and imposter syndrome that becomes paralyzing. I think that they're two different things entirely. And I feel like you could have experienced no self-doubt while you were doing something, and then at one moment completely start to feel imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of the times, um, at least in my experience, imposter syndrome won't likely leave me paralyzed, but will likely leave me um, struggling to acknowledge self-worth. Um, so while it doesn't get to that state that it's paralyzing me, it is always at that state, and it's also not letting me experience the joy of my accomplishments. So it's always there in the back, lingering, waiting, and always sort of sitting on this simmer. Um, and no matter how much I accomplish or achieve, I'm unable to turn that simmer off. And I don't think that that simmer is causing me to push for my growth. I think I'm pushing for my growth because I am organically growth driven. If anything, it is coming in the way of me experiencing the joy of my accomplishment or my achievement. So I kind of see them as two very different um, frames of mind.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that response. Dr. Pasquadia, would you like to share your thoughts
yeah,
on this question?
I don't know why it's still percolating in my brain, but I still,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, I like what you said, Sherry, there in the chat, that is self-doubt healthy at all? I'm not sure. But I like what you're saying about self-awareness, and whether that, I'm highly self-aware, and oftentimes wish others were more frequently. I think it's just the nature of the field that I am. Counseling psychology, and psychology, you're just constantly having kind of this critical self-awareness and introspection. And in some cases, that's helpful. You get to kind of see, really take a look at kind of the big picture in which you're and, have some compassion and empathy for what others may think, may not think. The only challenge, as I mentioned before, with that being so self-aware, then it's kind of, I pick up on kind of the external factors a lot. And so I think that has just driven me to become more, you kind of have to build up that internal confidence to take the place of kind of, if you're not getting affirmations elsewhere. Um, I haven't yet, in terms of imposter syndrome becoming paralyzing. I think if anything, the less I think people believe in me, the more I want to do more things and prove them wrong, and generally just driven as well. So, yeah, I think that's kind of just my perspectives on some of the things.
Yeah. And thank you to both so far of sharing your perspectives and being vulnerable and sharing these responses. I'm seeing a lot of heads nods as you're speaking, so thank you so much for that. Before we move on to the next question, I don't know if anyone from the e-board would want to share some of their perspective on this particular question before we move forward. And again, no pressure, friends from the GSERA executive board.
I can kind of chime in here, and this goes off of not only what was shared in the chat just now about how, it's especially in thinking about the student perspective, it can be difficult for us as students in this remote asynchronous program to unpack a lot of that self-doubt and the imposter syndrome because it's asynchronous and it's not like we're passing each other every day to air our grievances, like if we're passing each other on campus. And this also kind of connects to what the panelists mentioned about it could all depend on the space that you're in or the course that you're in, for the quarter, right? Maybe it's a class that you have previously been exposed to in another grad program or another undergrad program, and therefore that's what drove you to that class, and therefore you go into that class with a little bit of confidence in that with that prior knowledge, because knowledge sometimes can be that power. But then when you go into like R 3.5 and you got that IRB approval and you're like, oh, this is becoming real. This is where maybe we're feeling some imposter syndrome. I know, like, I'm anticipating that myself personally, So I think, again, the context is a big component for sure.
That's so interesting. So I'm just going to comment quickly, and I see Sherry had the question, but or her their hand up. It's interesting that kind of perspective about the asynchronous world. In so many ways, it's very one-dimensional, or two, if you count the other person that you're speaking with or the screen that you're talking with, or kind of you don't get that chance to kind of reflect and kind of bounce things off of other people and such. So that's interesting and definitely a challenge.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry, do you want to?
Yeah, I was something came to me when you were inviting us e-board or former e-board members to sort of share personal examples, and I'm thinking of how, like, for me, when imposter syndrome has become paralyzing, like, it's not paralyzing forever, but does it like stop me in my tracks for a week or a week and a half until I dig myself out of it? Why, yes, it does. And for me, I remember being really shocked when it was time for me to file my IRB paperwork to start my own research, because in my professional job, I had done IRB applications and renewals all the time. I had helped run organizational IRBs. And so, like, the actual skills were totally in my wheelhouse. But Tay, that feeling that you were just talking about of like, oh, holy expletive, this is real. This is my work. And that was where sort of the emotional journey of filling out that IRB application was so much more intense than I had anticipated before going into it.
Awesome. I love both responses and as well as from the student responses. And before we move on to the next question, I think I look at this group that's here tonight, faculty, which is awesome, but the number of students are here as well, which is fantastic. And I feel like as you're progressing through 3.5, 4, 8750 and 8760, really making sure you find those opportunities. We're going to talk about strategies in just a few moments, but really finding those opportunities to really connect with each other and remind each other and assure one of another that, yes, we got this, we can do this together. Because I think sometimes once you get post R4, it can become lonely because you're outside that rhythm of discussion boards. But when you are doing your research, find your groups, find your Sarah, find one another, because I do feel like that's something that could help with that doubt, and remind everyone here that you do have a place at this table, which is awesome. So Yeah, small little plug. All right. Great. Thank you so much for the response. Tay, would you like to move forward to the next one? Just checking on time here too. Oh, great. All right. All right. So building on this conversation of experiences with imposter syndrome, how have you worked to live with imposter syndrome, or how have you overcome imposter syndrome? Either Dr. Pasquadia or Dr. Ali?
I can go first. So no, I have not overcome it. Because I don't know if it's possible to completely overcome it. But have I worked to live with it? Yes, there are times when I have to really tell myself, I'm like, get a grip on yourself, Noor. Have you seen your resume? And you know, and that's pretty much it. Like I have to remind myself, you've written a lot. Like you are actually an author on this is your area of expertise. So there's a lot of self reminders that need to happen. Um, eh, I do remember that when I was doing my doctorate, at those same very early stages that we were just talking about getting the IRB, et cetera, et cetera, um, you wonder many times if you can independently conduct a study. And then the same doubt comes into your mind when you're going in for your final defense. Where like, what if I totally suck at this? Or what if they find out that I'm really, a con artist and I don't really know what I'm talking about? And I remember when I was in the program, my mentors telling me that your chair is not going to let you defend unless they're certain that you will be able to defend. And also, no one in the room is an expert on your study except you, because you are the person who has conducted that study. And while people might have written literature about things around it, nobody's really done the study that you have done. So therefore, own it. Go in there knowing that you have owned it, right? So I think that self-talk is really important. That connects to Tracy's point about affirmations as well. Like we have to affirm ourselves. There's so much and so many around us that will very easily bring us down. Um, but that self-talk is really important. The other thing is choose your battles wisely. I think that's the other thing that I've learned in working to live with imposter syndrome. I have to choose my battle wisely because there's going to be people around me that can say stuff. Um, what am I going to pay attention to? And what am I just going to consider stupid? That's a choice I get to make, right? That's a choice I get to make. Like I remember there was this course I was teaching at Northeastern on campus. It was to undergrad students. It was an education course that GSE offered to undergrads. So I used to go and teach that course. And there was a professor who taught in the same classroom as I did right after me. So, our paths would cross sometimes, but there was never any conversation. And sometimes people, because of whatever their internal noise is, will find it hard to say hello to someone who looks like me. Um, Anyways, one of those days, the professor says, "Hey, so do you teach in this room before me?" And there was a question mark there, not that do you teach, but do you teach here before me? And I was like, yes, I do. And then the professor goes, isn't it amazing how you're here? And I'm like, um, yes, Northeastern's lucky to have me. I have a great resume. And then they go, no, I mean, isn't it amazing how someone like you can be in a place like this? And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that, which I totally did. And he goes, well, even in my culture, and gave the reference of Greece, someone, like women um, are not really at the forefront of education. And then to be over here in the United States of America, in Boston, at Northeastern University to be teaching, isn't that just so amazing? And I was done by then, and I was like, okay, I'm out. And even when I talk about this today, there's something inside of me that is unhappy. There's a part of me that's like, that's a Title IX violation. I could have filed for it. I can still file for it. Should I have called HR? Blah, 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 blah. There's all of that. There's a fighter in me that wants to fight this on so many fronts. But there's also someone who's hurting inside because of that, who doesn't really want to fight, but wants to have the hurt acknowledged. And I think a lot of this imposter syndrome is us, whether we're going to allow ourselves or not allow ourselves to acknowledge that we hurt. When this imposter syndrome creeps in, it's not just it creeping in because I want it to creep in. It's creeping in because society is forcing us to rethink whether we deserve anything at all, right? Depending on so many different things. So yes, at that point, I have to choose my battle. I have to choose my battle. What do I want to focus on? Do I want to focus on how I'm feeling, how I'm going to process this? Do I want to focus on the fight? Do I want to focus on one stupid comment is not going to take over my entire life and my career, and I'm going to move on and just call it stupid, which it is, and that's it, and turn that page. I give that as an example because sometimes when we're in the program, we might be thinking, oh, once I'm faculty, things are going to change because I'll be on this pedestal. I don't think that's true. I don't think anyone's at any pedestal. Like, I think these things just kind of linger with you. So yeah.
Thank you, Noor, for sharing that personal experience. Dr. Pasquadia, would you like to add something to that or share your?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's definitely ongoing. So I'm living with it, the imposter syndrome. I haven't overcome it. It comes and go, like we've been talking about. And I guess through the years and things, and it varies at whatever position I would say that I'm in, whether it's student or what kind of role I'm at an institution. And what I've come to realize, it's kind of, and I think you were alluding to this too, Nora, it's like less about me when I pause in a moment when something happens, when I start to question, this seems a little bit funny or something's going on. I realize that it's less about me and it's more about them or whomever else in the room or in the space. And to remind myself, it's fun, whenever I do start to apply for jobs and things like that over the course of my career, I look back at my resume or my CV and I'm like, oh, I am pretty cool. But, I'm like, wow, that's really neat. So if you ever need those moments, just take a look at that. Sometimes you don't look at things in a length of period of time. You only see a portion of it. So then you forget of all the accomplishments that you've done. And just, in those moments, it's really fun to see that. The other thing that I want to say is that when we were talking earlier about just kind of those internal messages, I've definitely worked through the years on kind of undoing those internal messages. I mean, they're based on kind of where I grew up. I was in predominantly white neighborhoods and being the only Asian person, so I didn't fit in and I didn't look like the other folks. So then, of course, that's the message of where part of my messages come from of, that maybe I'm not good enough because I don't look like that certain person, or I don't have the same kind of clothing or hair or whatever you want to call it. So I think undoing those messages have been helpful, and also focusing then on the strengths that I do bring to situations, because we all do bring kind of that strength from where you are at in terms of your own positionality and your own identity. But a lot of times in society, we focus on kind of the things that you don't bring, right? Kind of what are not your strengths, kind of we're always trying to kind of solve problems. So I think just focusing on the strengths piece is very helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And and I think uh, what I kind of heard from both of you was this the power of your responses and how you choose to respond. That's where your strength lies. From Dr. Ali, how you chose to respond to that situation that you shared with us, and Dr. Pasquadia, how you are choosing to focus on strengths, come from a strengths-based standpoint. That's some really good words of wisdom. I know for me personally, I alluded to in the very beginning that in addition to being a professor at Northeastern University, which I still pinch myself every day to say I get to do that, as I say, I was a principal of a middle school. And the middle school that I'm actually a principal at is the same middle school that I went to as a student. And I can promise you, my middle school self and my principal self, two different people. I was not the best of student. Learning was very difficult for me. And I was fairly young when I became principal, and it was challenging because I had teachers that now I'm their principal were the ones that were sending me to the principal's office when I was 12, 13 years old. So it was just this moment of, wait, hang on, I'm not that person. I'm no longer that person. I went to school, I studied hard, I got my doctorate in educational leadership, and to both points, my resume shows like, yes, I deserve this. So some of that self-talk and focusing on the strengths, not focusing on the negatives. So I just want to share that little perspective with you all. Um, all right, just keep an eye on the time here, making great timing. Tay, would you want to move us forward to the next question? Awesome. I'll give you everyone a chance just to read this, then I'll read it. All right, so how do you perceive and respond to manifestations of imposter syndrome among your students or mentees through your practice?
Let's start this time. When I think about, I'm just thinking of a particular, when we were talking about when you get to the writing phase, and that phase you almost seem like you feel like you're alone, but you're not. And I think I've seen where those moments of imposter syndrome come up with students or mentees, and that it just becomes so overwhelming because writing chapter 1 or 2, writing 5 chapters or whatever it is a lot. And it just looks like you're never going to finish it, right? And I think what I tried to do in working with students and mentees is just really break it down into smaller things. And I do this with myself too, because I get overwhelmed when I try to look at all the things I have to do or all the things I need to get done to be able to accomplish something. So really just breaking it into smaller things and what can be done either every day or, what can you do in 1 hour? You don't have to look to it about like it's going to take 100 hours for you to finish this writing it, but maybe it's about what are you going to do in the first hour this first day in this week, and just really talking about that. I'm trying to think of other. Yeah, I'll just stop there and kind of give that example. I can add more later too.
Um, I I don't think um I've had any student that as a mentee for dissertations um who did not experience self-doubt. I think everyone that has crossed my path has experienced self-doubt when they are at two major stages, while when they're filling the IRB, it seems overly technical to everyone. And when it comes to your defense, um, literally every person that's crossed my path has said that they um, feel self-doubt at that point. But is self-doubt imposter syndrome? Um, I don't think so. I mean, I think we're going to be nervous. Feeling nervous about something is very different from feeling that you are undeserving or unworthy or incapable of things that you are very capable of and might already have achieved and accomplished, right? Um, so will I tend to remind my students all the time that there is a systemic violence in academic spaces that we cannot overlook, that we should stare it in the face at the systemic oppression and violence that exists in academic spaces against our full beings. I will speak about how these systems are dehumanizing. I will speak about the myth of meritocracy. I will speak about the gatekeeping of knowledge. I will speak about overcomplicated language that exists to deny access to ease of understanding. And I will ask my students and my mentees, how are you going to disrupt that? How are you going to disrupt it? Because these things have perpetuated that long because people, when they end up on the other side of the fence, consistently keep on perpetuating them. They are, the moment they cross over to the side of power, they become the oppressors, and they are like, oh, we've earned this privilege now. Even the language we use around knowledge systems, earned the privilege. Like, are you kidding me? So I think it takes a lot for us to be cognizant of things that create imposter syndrome in other people. And if we are aware of what creates imposter syndrome in other people and how we may be perpetuating it, I think we will be better in guarding ourselves from it as well, and being able to say, I own it. The other thing is, you all are, I don't know what your algorithm is like, but mine talks about these types of things all the time. Everybody wants to be a life coach to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I get so many of those, like, you need a life coach, woman in leadership, you need a life coach. I don't need a life coach because I'm a woman in leadership. That assumption is problematic. So there are all of these things. And then you've probably heard this term before, like build your own brand, right? You are your own brand on LinkedIn or whatever. I mean, I've never, this is deeply disturbing to commodify ourselves and to think of ourselves as commodities and brands, that we are human beings. And when we arrive with our full selves, I think we will not be facing all of this, the, the troubles of imposter syndrome as much. So yes, my advice would be, be be fully present where you are, open spaces for other people, and allow yourself for that space to open for yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when you were chatting, there were flames coming up. There were like high fives, there was claps. It was I never seen the flames before. That was very cool, Dr. Pasquini. I thought you got to teach me that one. Before I move on to the last question, just because I saw a visual reaction to that. I didn't know if anyone um in the group and the panel, I'm sorry, the participants had a follow-up thought to that, a question to that, um, just due to the reaction that I was seeing from the participants. Just want to give just a moment and all right.
I know it's making me think, who came up with the phrase of imposter syndrome, right? Why do we have it in the first place? I mean, there's a whole talk of kind of calling it a syndrome versus a phenomenon versus who is it? Whose whose syndrome is it, in terms of what we're talking about. Yeah. So
Yeah. All right. Awesome. And I'd like to move to our last prepared question, then that will leave us in 10 minutes or so if anyone has any questions for the panel here. So how have your positionality and career influenced the way you experience and make sense of of imposter syndrome? So either Dr. Ali or Dr. Pasquadia?
I know, I feel like we've talked a little bit about this already in different ways. Yeah, it's just been kind of a ongoing growth experience for myself in terms of where I'm at in my career, what I've done, what I've accomplished, and how positionality. It's interesting. So I've been, you know, uh, early career person, and then now more, kind of higher in that leadership ladder, and it exists in both of those times, right? And it's different things that kind of the sense of imposter syndrome comes up. It's still the same. It's almost the same question, just a different picture and things. So I think, but each time I start to kind of believe it less that actually I'm all good uh, because of just based on reflecting on it and thinking about how far I've come and then the things that I've done and the folks that I've interacted with. I think it's helpful to have colleagues, friends, people who can be your mentor or whatnot to be able to kind of just give you those reminders of the kind of all the accomplishments that you have achieved. So I think, I've built now kind of this ecosystem or system of folks in my to be able to support me. So it's been very helpful to have that where I can now just kind of reflect and joke with them too when stuff comes up and laugh or in situations when you think, oh, remember, I would have thought it was this way back then. So I think that's been very helpful to me in my career, just making sense of it all. And being in situation, being able to talk about it in spaces like this, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. It's awesome. Thank you. Dr. Ali.
Yeah, I think I spoke about my the influence of my positionality and career on on imposter syndrome. But I do think that one of the things I find myself questioning myself is purpose, right? You want to ask yourself, why are you doing this? I do feel like, I know I alluded to joy in the beginning. Joy is overrated. But I do think we have to ask ourselves, like, what is the purpose? Like, what is the purpose behind us doing the things that we are doing? These are all verbs, right? So you're doing all of these things. So ask yourself this question. A purpose is something that should change you into a noun, right? It shouldn't just be the actions that are being performed by you, but who are you? And then I would ask myself this question, why am I doing the stuff that I'm doing? And then maybe you want to ask yourself this question, who am I trying to prove this to? Because I think that's at the root of imposter syndrome. Like, are you trying to prove yourself to yourself? Are you trying to prove yourself to society, to academia, or whatever? Is this like a proving thing? Is that the purpose here? That you're able to prove something to someone? Because if you didn't, you think your self-worth would be challenged, like you are undeserving to have self-worth in the absence of this verb, in the absence of this work, because that's problematic, right? You don't want to, that's just not a cool space to be in. So for me, I think a lot of this, in terms of making sense of the imposter syndrome, is asking myself these very basic questions, like, why am I doing this? Or like, who am I? Because of all of this branding noise that we hear around ourselves, makes you question, like, who are you really, right? Who are you doing this for? So So yes, Sherry, yes. I mean, I think purpose is something that would give us meaning and joy. Um, so I think that that's been one way to navigate this, and the other is to just tell myself that this I learned. Also, I don't know who said it to me, but you know, don't go, don't take feedback seriously or critically from people you wouldn't go to for advice. So if, because people will give free feedback all the time. And not all of it has to be taken. Actually, none of it has to be taken. You don't owe it to anyone to take all of that feedback. A lot of it is the result of people's own relationship with themselves. And we don't want that to have an application on our sense of value and worth. Um, so be intentional about what is occupying the space in your head and your heart and your soul. Like what's occupying it. And if it's unnecessary to you, and if it's nothing special, if it's not something you care about, then don't let it take that. I don't know, I run the risk of sounding like Mel Robbins here, but so I'll stop. But I think the important thing really for me is like I have to ask myself this question about why am I doing this? What is the purpose? So that I don't get into this cycle of do I deserve it, or am I good enough or whatnot. You don't have to be perfect at anything to be able to do it. So just forget that question, do am I good enough? Nobody's asking that question, are you good enough? That's not a certification that you have. This is a good enough certification and now you may proceed. Like nobody cares. So just go ahead and just do your thing.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for that. I also saw a lot of head nodding there too. And Dr. Pasquade, thank you so much as well. And I know we're about 5 minutes. I can't believe how fast this hour went. That's amazing. So there's about 5 minutes or less or so, and I would love to open up for a few questions. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm not sure if anyone would like to raise their hand or if anyone want to post something in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to get to a few questions before our time is up this evening. And Tay, if you don't mind moderating the chat for me, that would be if any questions come up in the chat.
Sure thing.
Great. Sherry, I see your hand raised if you have a question.
Yeah, it's sort of part question, part observation, because as I've been listening to these insights and these different stories that doctors Ali and Pasquadea have shared, I'm also remembering kind of the aha moment when I first read Milner and the reframing of the achievement gap as an opportunity gap. And I know that some of the relanguaging of imposter syndrome to imposter phenomenon is trying to kind of get at that rather than suggesting it's a disease or a cause of stigma if you have these feelings. But I kind of want to like, what's the reframing and the renaming of imposter syndrome that really kind of gets at those forces and those cultural traumas and the kind of dehumanization that can exist in the academic setting, that it's like outsider messaging or something like that. I'm not sure where to go with that.
Thank you,
Well,
Sherry.
there's literature that refers to this as intellectual settler colonialism, and I would agree with that. I think that intellectual settler colonialism is something that represents itself in the product of imposter syndrome as well. Um, I haven't read direct literature that correlates the two, but it very much seems like a byproduct of it.
Great, thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
I
Pasquale.
definitely, I mean, it's kind of, we've been talking about, and you said earlier, Nora, about, I mean, it's what we're seeing is just kind of that dominant narrative influencing how you see yourself. Uh, and so how do you provide that counter narrative to be able to, I don't know, what do you call it, challenge that, I think is the thing. You know, if we could, it's so embedded in our systems, like you said earlier, and it's like, how do you flip it? It's going to take all of us to be able to do that and change how we say things, how we, you know, set things in terms of, I like what you said earlier about, you know, like, who am I trying to prove? Like, who are you in competition with? You know, if I think about who am I in competition with, sometimes it's actually myself first. And then why am I in competition with somebody else? You know, shouldn't it be more of a collectivist mindset of how we're bringing, how, what are we doing to bring each other together so that we can all uplift ourselves? So just a few thoughts on that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry, for that response, reflection, question, and Dr. Ali and Dr. Pasquadia for your response there. Again, I want to be mindful of time. I know we're kind of right up at it. Tay, do you want to talk about GSERA and what's next and how to keep the conversation going before we sign off today?
Sure thing, absolutely. And thank you to everyone who is here tonight and engaged, whether it was by actively listening, questions in the chat, comments in the chat, fire emoji reactions, all the things. We love to see it. And as for some of you who might be like brand new to GSERA, feel free to take out any phone or smartphone device, you know, that you have to scan the QR code that's here. This will bring you to our link tree that has every link to connect with us, whether it's through the brand new newsletter we sent out recently. That's the one-stop shop for all events with GSERA. We do have Power Hour coming up very soon as well. And again, every month we have these general membership events. And a lot of the times, the topics that we cover are because of all of you voicing what you need. So please keep the ideas coming. This imposter syndrome topic, for example, it came up during just our new member orientation because it was a shared theme that we all struggle with, no matter where you're new, you know, someone like us on the e-board or someone who's about to defend. We all feel it. So again, like please, our email, our inbox are always open. Anything that you're feeling, anything that you're noticing in the program, like let's unpack that together and make these safe spaces lead with vulnerability and be there for one another. And any resources you need to or and you want training on, you know, we have connections to people who can get training for. So just remember that, especially in light of like this topic of imposter syndrome, we're all in this program because we're all doing innovative things that no one else has probably done before. So when you feel that, just empower yourself in knowing that you are making a change here in this program, and we're all here to support you. So thank you all for being here, and feel free to hang back if you still have any other questions. But until then, until the next GSERA event, we're so excited to see you all and see you all soon.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Tay, for that. And thank you to Dr. Ali and thank you, Dr. Pasquatia, for your expertise tonight and just being so vulnerable and sharing your thoughts on this very important topic to everyone and participants. Awesome job. Thank you so much for being here.
Have a great night, everyone, or a great day wherever you're coming from.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the feedback in the chat, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording.